Hello, welcome. We are together today because Pastor Joe Naughton has a wonderful new book out. You might have a copy of it already. I have one in my hand, My Pretend Friend. It's a brilliant book and a very, very timely one as well. Don't forget, if you have a question for Pastor Joe, do send it in underneath this broadcast here. You can just tap the question, give it to me, and I'll give it to Pastor Joe. So, Pastor Joe, welcome to you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for writing the book. I had saw an early copy of it and really enjoyed it. It's very, very timely this year, given all that we're going through. So it's a very intriguing title, isn't it? We don't like to think that we have a fake friend in our life. We hope all our friends are genuine. But why My Pretend Friend? Why did you call it that, and what's it about?
Yeah, so this book exposes a universal inner enemy that turns up in our lives and gives the impression that it's the only one that really understands our pain. And let me put it this way. It strokes our wounds, but never heals them. It whispers all these different thoughts into our ears that are weirdly comforting, but actually only drag us down. And it tells lies that can just bring hopelessness and that horrible sense of despondency into our hearts. I called it My Pretend Friend because it's so common, so universal. It sounds like it's reasonable, and yet what it's doing is literally robbing God's promises from us.
Wow. And that's the thing, isn't it? Because if you'd written a book about, say, getting drunk every night or jealousy or pride, everybody's well aware those things are sinful. But there's something quite seductive about this particular sin, that it doesn't seem like it's a bad thing, does it?
That's right. When we go through terrible trauma or tragedy, that's hard enough as it is. The pain of trauma, the pain of tragedy, of loss, of all sorts of different types of difficulties. But what this thing does is it takes that trauma and that pain and turns it into something that feels bleak and dark, a place that we can't escape. And so, really, My Pretend Friend is self-pity, but that's quite a crude term to cover everything that I talk about in the book. And it's that voice that says, no one understands your pain. It's that voice that makes you want to separate and isolate. It's those thoughts that come that say, I can't cope. This is too much. I can't handle this anymore. Life isn't fair. And you see, any one of those statements sound like they're reasonable.
Yes.
But actually, Scripture will tell us that every single one of those statements I just made are actually lies from the pit of hell.
Yes. I mean, aren't you entitled to feel a bit self-pitying? Because many of us, all sorts of people, you have horrible things happen. You lose a relative, you lose your job or whatever. A lot of people say, well, look, that person is entitled to feel quite down in the dumps, quite self-pitying for quite a while. If someone loses their job, that's a bad thing to happen. Isn't that sort of kind of fair enough, that people have just got to sort of, that you can have a pity party for a year or so if something bad happens?
Well, of course you can. But this is the question. Do I want my pain to last even longer? Do I want heartache to become even harder? And what self-pity does, if I'm feeling really sorry for myself, feeling this is terrible, this is awful, it just amplifies the agony. But what I want to do when I'm hurting is I want to get healed. What I want to do really is recognize, one of the chapters is all about perspective. And perspective is so very helpful. For example, after our daughter died, I really felt like, this is the worst thing that could ever happen. Our lives had just been smashed to bits. And then God started to give me some different perspectives. Number one, I realized that if a day is like 1,000 years of the Lord, then for Naomi, it would be like we were gone for 45 minutes.
Right.
Now, that simple biblical truth alone made me go, do you know what? This is going to be all right. We're going to get through. And then other ones, realizing there are people who've gone through, lost entire families in tragedies and come out the other side strong. And I would suddenly go, you know what, self-pity is telling me that I'm going to have to be in a terribly dark place for a long time.
Yes.
But Scripture tells me that I need to get healed. I need to pour out my pain. I need to be real about the agony. But then I need to actually listen to what hope and faith are saying.
And is there something about self-pity that if we don't deal with it, it's not necessarily just a passing phase, it's a rut that we could get stuck in for life potentially? Some people never get over tragedies, do they?
That's right. And the opening paragraph in this book, I think the last sentence says, self-pity digs a pit and asks me to climb inside. Self-pity will trap us in sadness. It will trap us in trauma, and it will hold us in that place for a very long time.
So it's a very serious thing, and is it almost a destiny killer? You could sort of not do all that God wanted you to do because you do get stuck in this rut marked self-pity.
I have no doubt that it can destroy destinies, because you see,
Wow.
if I believe that my suffering, my hardship sets me apart, makes me different, then I'm going to think, then I'm going to almost expect things to be difficult. I'm going to pray in a way where I think God should answer my prayers as a consolation prize. Yes. I'm going to expect concessions from other people. Expect them to accept my bad behavior. In other words, I'm going to allow certain character issues to develop on the inside. And I'm not going to allow faith to grow, but I'm going to accept lower standards, which will keep me out of my destiny.
And is the problem with self-pity that it does make you feel special? Like not minimizing the tragedy, but if you lose a member of your family, it makes you feel like you're the only person that who's lost a member of your family, and that's what gets you stuck in this thing.
Yeah, it makes you feel very special in this weird way, and it makes you feel that your suffering sets you apart, that somehow you are different. But you see, what does the Bible say? And this is the thing. We've got to learn in the midst of our pain to say, God, this is agony, but there's nothing new under the sun.
Yeah.
How many times does Ecclesiastes say that? Lord, I recognize that countless people across the world have suffered like me and far worse, and they've come out strong, so I will too. You see, self-pity says, my lot in life is the worst. You don't understand my pain. This is terrible. And so we believe these lies and get stuck. Whereas God is always wanting to lead us out.
Yeah. There's a very powerful bit in the book where you were talking about watching something on TV about Mozambique, and there were some Christians there who were praising God, and it was clear they had all come from homes where they had very little. There was not so long ago, some devastating floods in Mozambique, and many in Mozambique had lost absolutely everything, not just homes, but family members. And there was a sudden contrast, almost like the Holy Spirit was speaking to you and saying, well, look, they have lost a tremendous amount, but they're still able to be grateful to God. And that was a moment when you realize, goodness, there's something about gratitude that is one of the steps to getting out of that pit marked self-pity.
Absolutely. And gratitude takes our eyes off our own circumstances and lifts them to the Lord. And when we look at him, suddenly his light can fill our hearts again. And gratitude is so powerful. Even my daughter was just saying a couple of days ago that she woke up just feeling really down. She said, Mummy, I did that gratitude thing.
Yeah.
And within 10 minutes, I
Wow.
just felt, wow, today's going to be an amazing day. And she said it was a great day. Gratitude lifts us. Praise literally takes us out of places that feel dark and horrible into good places. And so, there are so many things. The way the book's written is the first part is called the culprits. In other words, what causes me to get into that place of self-pity? Agony, injustice, and difficulty.
Wow, yeah.
The second part is called its weapons. In other words, the weapons that the enemy uses during those times to make self-pity come alive. Number one, whispers, these thoughts, different types of thought patterns, lies, and thirdly, isolation. Tries to make us feel separated.
Yes.
But then the third part is called God's remedies. And healing is number one. We have to get healed when we go through hardship and heartache. But then number two, perspective, changing our perspective to God's perspective. And thirdly, praise. It is so powerful.
Wow, wow. And is it something that some Christians can struggle with in particular? Maybe sort of people in ministry, you know, sometimes as Christians we feel we're sort of owed one but by God, especially if something bad happens. You think, you know, God, I prayed for this, it didn't happen. As a favor to me, please can you do something for me? And this does a good job of dismantling that, doesn't it?
Exactly, because as Christians we definitely have our own little narrative that goes on. And, you know, part of what self-pity does is it makes us feel entitled. And entitlement is horrible. We feel entitled
Sure.
to special treatment, entitled to blessings. Now, yes, we inherit blessings.
And that's not faith, that sense of,
No,
I'm entitled,
it's
God, I
horrible.
deserve this, please.
It's terrible. And so, yes, this book is going to help any Christian, because I think we all struggle with it.
Yeah.
At one time or another. And it's going to help any Christian to see how the enemy is trying to add insult to injury in any difficult season.
Yeah, great. And we've got questions, I think, coming up. Hopefully have a couple of those on the screen. Don't forget, if you've got a question for Pastor Joe, do write it down the bottom and we'll do our best to read it as soon as possible. We want to make this interactive, and I know you'll have questions for Pastor Joe. If people want to order the book, how do they do that? What's the easiest way to do that?
Either through the church office here or through joenaughton.com. And there is a special offer right now. It's £12.50 for one, but you can get 2 for £22 or 3 for £30. And we also have a $1 offer, and you get postage completely free as part of that offer as well. So yeah, either joenaughton.com or via the church office here.
Lovely, that's great. We've got some questions coming in now. Thank you. Just putting these up on the screen. So one of these is, some people don't know they're living with this pretend friend. That's a really good one, isn't it? How can I help them acknowledge it? that's a good one.
I mean, honestly, give them the book. Give them the book. Yeah, the reason I say that is it's very hard to say to somebody else, and we really shouldn't try and tell people you're suffering from self-pity.
Yeah.
We can't do that to other people. We have to help them discover it. And so it's the sort of thing to say, wow, this book really helped me. Or I heard this message about this book, and wow, I knew I needed it, and I wanted to share it with you too. The moment we try and tell somebody, it sounds like an accusation, and it can come across in the wrong way.
No, absolutely.
Good question.
Absolutely right. And to some people, are there probably a lot of people who don't acknowledge it? It's only sort of once you've seen this as a problem. A lot of people will, you know, going through the motions, and they don't realise they're harbouring this person.
Most of us don't realise. I had no idea before last year that I still struggled with a lot of self-pity. I thought that I'd struggled with it one time in my life after my daughter died, and that it wasn't my problem until God started to expose it in my life.
So it's often something you have to keep coming back to, not just
without a doubt.
I've not got self-pity, I'm on to my next problem. You know, you've got to go back over it again.
Once God exposes it, it's easier then afterwards to spot it. But yes, we need to keep a guard against this enemy.
Great, thank you. Got another question coming in. What's your favourite chapter in your book and why? That's a good one.
Yeah, and I think my favourite chapter is the chapter called Whispers.
Right.
For me, the chapter called Whispers, which is, I believe, chapter 5, was the life-changing chapter. But you can't read chapter 5 until you've read the first 4 chapters, because otherwise you won't understand it well enough. But definitely chapter 5, Whispers.
Yeah. So is God taking you through a journey, through a process, through the whole book?
Definitely. No. Peeling one layer after another.
Excellent. Did it take a long time to write the book? Is it something that had been brewing for a while?
It's been brewing for quite a while, and then yes, it did. Every time God exposed something or did something in me, I would then write a bit more. So a lot of times, literally, I might have come out of my secret place, getting healed of something or having something exposed by the Lord, and then I would literally pick up my iPad and start to write. So my journey is really put in print in this book.
Yeah. Can you share one moment when you suffered from self-pity? You've touched on this a little bit before, but anything sort of particularly come to mind?
Definitely. You know, my husband and I had a difficult season last year. And there was one particular time, it lasted about 3 months, when I did something to hurt him, and as a result, he got hurt and he shut down towards me for a while. And it was very, very private, so I couldn't talk about it.
Sure.
But in that time, that was when I began to understand the power of sad thoughts. Because I was so sad. Now, sad thoughts can be really, really powerful in a negative way. Now, we need to deal with sadness by pouring out our pain in the presence of God. But if we allow, like, this is so awful, this is really hard, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I feel hurt. Oh, if we allow sad thoughts to dominate, then we will be sucked of life. And so I had to learn to literally just deal with sad thoughts and instead to choose in the midst of that to push through into faith and just say, God, I know that you are going to bring us out the other side.
Wow. And did it take a long time to do that? Did
Well,
you have to do it repeatedly?
Season, I had to keep doing it again and again. And, you know, I saw so many different places where it was exposed that if we just dwell on whatever drops into our minds, then we can find ourselves really being sucked down into despondency.
Wow. No, that's excellent. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for the chat, and thank you very, very much for joining us today. I thoroughly enjoyed the book, and I'm going to buy several copies of it as well to give to people. So thank you very much indeed, Pastor Joe. Thank you for writing it, something that's so powerful and relevant to us. So thanks a lot, and thank you to you as well for joining us today.